Mark chapter 4, verses 26 through 29 is called the parable of the seed. Dads don't get much respect today. A doting father used to sing to his little children. He'd sing them to sleep at night. He even learned a few lullabies to lend some variety to the task. This was something that he could do at night to help his wife out. And he kept up this task until one night he overheard his 4-year-old give her younger sibling advice. She said, "If you pretend you're asleep, he'll quit singing." Have you noticed that fathers are belittled in the movies? They're belittled in TV commercials, most prevalent, where dads are the fall guys, big dummies, and schmucks. But being the butt of jokes, that's the most disrespectful thing that you can do to dads. Let me take you forward. The year is 2028. And the United States has just elected the first woman president, who happens to be from Kentucky. A few days after the election, the woman, her name Deborah, calls her father and says, "Dad, I assume you're going to be at my inauguration." Yeah, Dad says, "Well, honey, I don't think so. It's a 10-hour drive." "So don't worry, Dad. I'll send Air Force One to Lexington, pick you up, and then we'll have a limousine come to the house and get you." "Nah, I don't know, honey. Everybody too fancy up there for us." "What would your mother wear?" "Don't worry about it. I'll make sure she has a wonderful gown custom made by the best designers in Washington." "Honey," Dad still complaining, "you know I can't eat that rich food you all have up there." The president-to-be responds, "Don't worry, Dad. The entire affair will be handled by the best caterer in Lexington. I'll ensure your meals are salt-free. You and Mom just have to be here." So Dad reluctantly agrees. And on January the 20th, 2028, Deborah is being sworn in as President of the United States. And in the front row sits the new president's mom and dad. So Dad, noticing the senator sitting next to him, leans over and whispers, "You see that woman up there with her hand on the Bible, becoming the President of the United States?" Senator whispers back, "You bet I do." Dad says proudly, "Her brother played basketball for UK." Now that's a big deal. Dads are the butt of a lot of jokes. You know, I've told you this before, how Father's Day came about. Garrison Keillor, on his Writer's Almanac on National Public Radio, said Father's Days go back to Sunday morning, May 1909, when a woman named Sonora Dodd was sitting in church in Spokane, Washington, listening to a Mother's Day sermon. She thought of her father, who raised her and her siblings after mother died in childbirth. And she thought that fathers should get the recognition too. So she asked the minister of the church if he would deliver a sermon honoring fathers on her father's birthday, which was coming up in June. And the minister did. And the tradition of Father's Day caught on, but rather slowly. Mother's Day became an official holiday in 1914. Father's Day, not until 1972. Mother's Day is still the busiest day of the year for florists and restaurants. Father's Day is a day in which a quick text with a smiley face might be it. But I today will make restitution for all the daddies that are put down. So I do it with a story. There's a little girl. Ask her father, where did the human race come from? Her father replied, God made Adam and Eve, and they had children, and are the descendants of Adam and Eve, and we are the descendants of Adam and Eve. 2 days later, the little girl asked her mother, same question. Where did we come from? Her mother answered, many years ago, there were these monkeys. The human race evolved from the monkeys. Confused, the little girl went back to her father, told him what her mother had said. I'm confused, Dad, she said. Which is right? Her father smiled and said, it's very simple, honey. I told you about my side of the family, and your mother told you about hers. Happy Father's Day. Our lesson in Mark, Jesus is describing a kingdom of God. This is what the kingdom of God is like. A man scattered seed on the ground night and day, whether he sleeps or gets up. The seed sprouts and grows, though he does not know how. Now, Jesus is not talking about fatherhood in this passage, but isn't this the very first area in which we participate in the coming of God's kingdom to earth? It is the raising of our children. Raising good children is like scattering seed upon the ground. As author Ken Canfield notes, there are no guarantees in either raising kids or planting seed. A farmer can do all the right things and still lose the crop. So can parents. The farmer can till the ground at the right time, put the seed in right, and irrigate and fertilize according to the textbook, but does not guarantee the crop. And some of us had learned this the hard way. There's no guarantees. But generally, if we've done the best we can in planting or nurturing the seed, which are our children, we will have a good crop. Today, the word generally may be an overstatement. There's an estimated 24.7 million kids in the U.S. 33% live absent their biological father. Students in grades 1 through 12, 39% are absent their biological father. If you want to break it down even more, 72% of black families are absent biological father. 31% Hispanics are absent a biological father. And 21% of white population is absent biological father. And what does that tell us about our problems? Laura mentioned in our prayers requests today that our nation is violent, that violence is going on. Well, look what we've taught our kids. Look what has come up in our cities. We live in a rural area. even Lexington is rural. But go to the big places, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, New York, Chicago, and look what happens. That might be the statistic that's the most important. Doesn't always work out, of course. Many young women today are doing their best, though difficult job of raising young children without dad. But where possible, having dad around is a real difference. Some of us are familiar with the name William Raspberry, a syndicated writer for the Washington Post. And in one of his columns, he made this analogy. Some years ago, South Africa's game managers had to figure out what to do with the elephant population in the Kruger National Park. The herd was growing well beyond the ability of the park to sustain the herd. And so they decided to transport some of the herd to a nearby game park. A dozen years later, however, several of the young male elephants that they sent over there, were now teenagers, had been transported to the game park, and they began attacking the white rhinos, endangered species. They used their trunks to throw sticks at the rhinos, chased them long hours, great distances, and stomped them to death, at least 10 of them of the herd, all for no discernible reason. Park managers decided they had no choice but to kill some of the worst juvenile offenders, and they had killed 5 when someone came up with a bright idea. They brought some of the mature male elephants still residing in Kruger Park and hoped that the bigger, stronger males could bring the adolescents under control. To the delight of the park officials, it worked. Big bulls quickly established a natural hierarchy and reduced the violent behavior of the younger bulls. The new discipline, it turned out, was not just a matter of size intimidation. The young bulls actually started following the big daddies around, yielding to their authority and learning from them proper elephant conduct. The assaults on the white rhinos ended abruptly. So Raspberry's point was that young males, whether they're wild animals or human beings, need dads. Those of us who grew up in families in which dad was a positive influence will quickly agree. It doesn't always work out that way, of course. There are some families in which dad is absent, and it cannot be helped in some cases. There are other families in which dads do more harm than good, but fortunately, that's true only in a minority of families. Most dads do the best they can, and we're proud to come today and be able to honor them. Fathers are important. A conscientious father can do wonders in the lives of children, and many of us have observed this in our own families. A conscientious dad can have a wondrous impact on the lives of his offsprings. Now, it's Father's Day, and although there's only 4 of us in here, it's a day that my analogies will lean towards sports, so hang on, women. Football fans, there's a father who has rightfully been celebrated. His name is Archie Manning. Former NFL quarterback, successful businessman, husband and father of 3 sons, 2 of whom, Peyton and Eli, are former starting quarterbacks in the NFL. Even more important, all 3 Manning boys are men of character. Archie claims that one of his greatest joys in life is a relationship with his sons. All Manning boys praise their father for being actively involved in their lives. They describe him as a loving and supportive father. Archie recalls that as his sons were growing up, he made sure to spend a lot of time with them. One reason that Archie Manning has been so deliberate in building a relationship with his sons is because he lost that chance with his own father. Manning was just 19 when his father committed suicide. He determined that he would never waste an opportunity to show his sons how much he loved them, and he didn't. It inspires us when any man takes his responsibilities at home seriously. We celebrate sports heroes as dads only because their example sometimes makes us want to do better. In 1985, Tim Burke saw his boyhood dream come true the day he signed to pitch for the Montreal Expos. After 4 years in the minors, he was finally given a chance to play in the big leagues. And he quickly proved his worth because he set record after record in relief appearances by a rookie player. Along the way, Tim and his wife, Christine, adopted 4 children with very special needs, 2 daughters from South Korea, a handicapped son from Guatemala, and another son from Vietnam. All the children were born with serious illnesses. Neither Tim nor Christine were prepared for the tremendous demands such a family would bring. And with the grueling schedule of Major League Baseball, Tim was seldom around to help. So, in 1993, only 3 months after signing a $600,000 contract, which was at that time a huge contract with the Cincinnati Reds, Tim Burke decided to retire from baseball at the height of his professional career. When pressed by reporters to explain his decision, he simply said, "Baseball is going to do just fine without me, but I'm the only father to my children." Of course, you don't have to be a sports hero to be a dad. There are men all over the world who are seeking to model what it means to be a Christian dad. Maybe you know the story of a hotel manager in Rwanda, named Paul Rusesabagina. Perhaps you've seen the movie. In 1994, Hutu militants began a brutal assault against their Tutsi neighbors. More than 1 million people murdered by the Hutu. In the midst of the slaughter, over 1,200 desperate people took refuge in Paul's hotel. Daily, Paul faced down armed troops who wanted to invade the hotel and kill the occupants. Paul's courage and steadfastness in protecting the refugees in his hotel was so remarkable they made the movie Hotel Rwanda. Paul credits his father with giving him the courage he needed in that critical hour. His father had been well respected in his community. He was a wise man, and he always told the truth. And when the disputes in the community erupted, the elders called on Paul's father to mediate. He was so honest that if one party in the dispute was lying, they often confessed their lies as soon as they saw Paul's father. His noble character made him influential in the community. Paul claims that that example of his father inspired him as he faced murderous mobs during the Hutu massacre. A great dad can have that kind of influence. Many moms are courageous too. Still, it's true that a conscientious father can do wonders in the lives of children. There's no guarantees, but when conscientious men or women plant seeds and take the necessary step to nurture those seeds, miracles can occur. Of course, the love of a parent is but a pale reflection of the love of God. God is the ultimate sower of good seed in this world. We would not even know how to love if God had not first loved us. You and I are loved by God. This makes us spiritually rich. If only we knew that. We have treasures that are not dependent on the stock market or on the size of bank accounts or on the resale value of your house. We are rich because we are loved. We are loved by other people and we're loved by God. We are rich because we're loved. We are particularly mindful of our family relationship on a special day like Father's Day. To know that we are loved is the greatest gift we can receive from a parent. But to know we have a heavenly parent who loves us is the most wonderful gift of all. In 1997, a soldier in Jordan went on a rampage and shot and killed 7 Israeli schoolgirls who were on a field trip to the Island of Peace, which is a park on the Jordan River between Israel and Jordan. 2 of the girls were killed on the spot. The others were taken to Jordanian hospital, but later died, some due to mistreatment. In the midst of the anguish and anger and alienation, without warning, King Hussein, the king of the country where the crazy gunman lived, left his throne, left his palace, left his very country without notifying photographers or journalists, and entered the homes of the families of the slain girls. King Hussein, in all his majesty and grandeur, entered each of the modest homes of these grieving families and fell on his knees. He bowed down before them. In each home, he looked into the eyes of the mother and the father and the sisters and the brothers and all the people who were grieving the loss of each girl and said, I beg you, forgive me. Your daughter is like my daughter. Your loss is my loss. May God help you bear your pain. And then the king, humbled before them, bowed and walked out to go back to his country and back to his sovereignty. This king, Muslim king, gave us an image of the relationship with Christ, our relationship. The God of the universe humbled himself and came down into our world to show us how much he loved us. And now it's our job to take that love to others. Freely you have received this love. Freely give it. In 1995, Cal Ripken Jr. broke what many believe was baseball's unbreakable record. Lou Gehrig's record for consecutive games, 2,130. Known as baseball's all-time Iron Man, Ripken retired from baseball in 2001, 21 seasons with the Baltimore Orioles. His name appears in the record books repeatedly, most notably as one of only 7 players in the history to amass 400 home runs and 3,000 hits. Ripken regularly gives credit for all of his accomplishments to the example and teaching of his father, Cal Ripken Sr. Cal Ripken Sr. was a former baseball player, coach, and scout for the Orioles. In 1987 and 1988, Cal Ripken Sr. managed the Orioles. Both Cal Ripken Jr. and his brother, Billy, played for that team, a first in baseball history. In 1996, Cal Ripken Sr. was inducted into the Oriole Hall of Fame, and Cal Ripken Jr. was asked to say a few words about his father. It was an emotional moment. The younger man struggled to find just the right words. Finally, decided to tell a story. Story is about his 2 children, Cal Ripken Jr.'s children. Rachel, who was 6 years old, and her little brother, Ryan, who was 3. They had been bickering for weeks, and one day, Cal Ripken Jr. heard Rachel taunt Ryan. She said, you're just trying to be like Daddy. After a few moments, Cal asked Rachel, what's wrong with trying to be like Dad? When he had finished telling his story, Cal Ripken Jr. looked at his father and said, "That's what I've always tried to do." And that is what Christ expects out of his disciples. He expects us to try to be like Dad, Abba, Father, to be like our Heavenly Father who gave himself so completely for the world. Freely, men, you have received. Freely, dads, freely give. That's our challenge. So let's get with it, dads. Let's meet the challenge. And all God's people said,